Alright kids, I'm Ricky the Raptor, and I'm here to talk about the Raptor. No, not really. Before I start my little rant, just wanted to show off the Raptor mask that Savannah done some custom painting on. It's actually not too bad. She's got the right kind of paint set so the paint actually sticks. And there's one video of her doing one of the first couple of coats of it. Alright, so call this one Missing the Mark. I'm going to try to be just a slightly bit more organized than my normal rant, but obviously I'll still have my eclectic ranting for the whole thing. So, as we get closer to the 4th of July, I'd like to remind everybody that we had our president basically, well, more than basically in my opinion, he outright tried to leverage us getting the vaccine with being able to celebrate the 4th of July the way that we normally would. Considering that there are no laws, actual constitutional laws that have been passed that would keep us from doing that anyway, I find it quite odd, on top of the fact that there's free weed that's offered, free beer that's offered, free food that's offered. Like, this is just my half-baked ass opinion here, but it just seems very odd that if the virus is so deadly and the vaccine is so crucial to survival, you wouldn't have to bribe anybody for anything. You'd be having to fucking keep people from fighting in the line to get through the door, you know. But that's just me. I mean, it would be nice if that, you know, I'm pretty sure people get tired of hearing me rant, you know, and other people ranting, so it'd be nice if we could get some real investigative journalism into this shit. So, starting right off on the bat on the flag bait material, I find it a little odd that, you know, people say don't question the science, don't question this, don't question that. They say this, so this must be true because they're the experts. So, what is misinformation? Is it okay to say that something is misinformation if you have no information that disproves the other person's theory? I mean, at this point, your opinion, your simple opinion, could be labeled as misinformation. More to the point, you have people who aren't medical professionals telling other people who aren't medical professionals that because they're not a medical professional, to have any opinion on something that has to do with something in the medical profession, would be misinformation. What strikes me as ironic there is that if you parrot the talking points that are currently accepted, then it's not misinformation, even if you're not in the field in question, if you're not a professional in the field in question, which is just odd. It would almost seem like it's not about misinformation control. And then obviously you have the other level of misinformation where you have people who over a year ago were banned, deplatformed, some even fired from their jobs because they held either opinions or held theories that weren't accepted at the time by the CDC or the WHO. It extends as far to vaccines. For so long they were saying that no, there's no possible negative side effects coming from any of the vaccines until they couldn't hold the information back anymore, and then they said, oh well, it was just, even though it was somehow nationwide, that those were just instances where the vaccine was improperly stored, you know, or with the whole possibility, as far as the mainstream media says, that the coronavirus came out of the Wuhan lab. You know, people were deplatformed, censored, you know, labeled as misinformation for that, simply because it wasn't an accepted narrative, even though there was no evidence to the contrary. It's okay to feel like somebody's wrong, but to emphatically state that they are wrong and spreading misinformation, I think the onus is on that person then to provide enough information to have that stance. But that's just me. So bear that in mind. Not only are they using the idea of the 4th of July and what it stands for and our ability to celebrate it over our head, they're doing it at the behest of organizations that don't always agree with each other and can't always agree with themselves, depending on whether you're looking at the last month or even the last day, because they had very clear guidelines in regards to the need to vaccinate children, and there was none. Again, you'd have to look it up. Louder with Crowder, or Steven Crowder did a whole video on it, but it clearly states one day that there is no reason, based on the data or science, to require children to be vaccinated, to very hodgepodgey language that basically says we don't know, or it's up to you, or we're going to word it in such a way that once we start incentivizing parents to force their children to get vaccinated, that we'll be able to stand back and say that it's something that they supported. That's just my opinion, though. How long, they're bribing adults with fucking beer and weed. How long until they do the equivalent for children in that regard? Like, fuck's sake, they're already bribing parents to put their children through trials with, like, what, $1,500 for subjecting your child to an experimental mRNA vaccine that's never been done fucking before. When statistically, per the CDC, they're more likely to catch and die from the flu than they are from COVID-19, is a little bit of a head scratcher to me. And going on down that line, talking about missing the mark, it's been made, at least it seems to have made very clear, that we're not going to reach the mark that Biden said that we would, as far as having 200 million American, I guess, adults vaccinated. And the way that the media is still, again, with their bias, if it was fucking Trump, they'd be all over his ass, all over little mistakes that he fucking made, like they were when COVID first started. But when it comes to Biden, they're like, oh, well, he never committed to that. It was just a goal. Like, no, he came out and committed to that because he said we're already at 100 million, so we're going to set 200 million. He was building on top of what Trump had already established, and you wonder why they have to bribe adults to take this fucking vaccine. Well, there are quotes that you can look up, both video and text, of people like Fauci, people like Kamala, saying that they don't trust this vaccine because Trump was the one that was behind it. But as soon as they get behind it, even though everything was still the same, the only thing that changed is the political administration that was either for or against it. That's the only thing that changed. People don't think about that. It's like, how is it that the changing of the presidency didn't change who was producing the vaccine, how they were producing it, and how they were issuing it? So how is it that they can, it shouldn't surprise me, because in the Democratic DNC, you had Kamala Harris outright calling Joe Biden a racist and like a sexist and shit like that, and then the next thing you know, that's his fucking running mate, that's his VP. Like, I don't know why that should necessarily surprise people, but what the fuck can you do about it? And continuing on with vaccines, one thing that I don't get is that if you're vaccinated, why is it, based on the information on the vaccines, that you feel any onus to require anybody else to wear a mask? Because if you have the vaccine, you're supposed to have your protection. If you get it, again, it's not protecting you from getting it. It still is ideally supposed to be intended to do what every other vaccine does. It just skips the steps of what I think is called inoculation, where you get a little sick, your body learns how to fight it off, and then it's ready to fight it in a stronger form. It just skips that. So it's not like you're 100% protected from the vaccine, from the virus with the vaccine. But anyway, why would someone who's vaccinated have any expectation that they can expect other people to still wear their mask if they're not vaccinated, when before it was about, oh, you're a threat to me, you're a threat to me, you're a threat to the people that I'm going to go home and I'm going to be around. Well, if you're vaccinated, you shouldn't be able to propagate the virus. So what the fuck? Again, it just seems like it's just more or less about that control of other people, that trying to control everything. And it's ridiculous. To me, that's not liberty. That's not liberty. If you want to do something like that, go ahead. I may have an opinion about it, but I'm not going to outright tell another adult not to do something. If they're not going to force me to be involved, and it's not going to have any direct effect on me that I can't opt out of, I give a shit less if you get the vaccine. Just like you should give a shit less whether somebody is wearing a mask or not if you have the vaccine. I mean, to an extent, if you haven't really been wearing masks like other people have been requiring, and you're not sick yet, I think you can kind of do the math for yourself on that one. So, to go back a couple of beats, talk about old Kamala there. It's been not only 12 weeks since she's been appointed by the president to do something that she has yet to at least publicly show any progress on. She's been in interviews outright stating, we've been to the border. You gotta love politicians and their languaging. This is one thing I've always hated politicians of any stripe for, because they're very clear and precise, or at least they try to be clear and precise about their words and where it puts their statement. To say that we've been to the border is, in my opinion, a statement about the administration. Now, whether that may or may not be true is irregardless. The last time she was at the border as a politician was during the Trump administration. And I've talked about it before, but I'll say it again. What was she acting about? What was she acting like? She was acting like it was one of the worst things ever going on in this country. And then you fast forward to now, years later, and those same facilities that are anywhere from 2 to 400, one of them was at over 500% capacity. No fucking tears. No fucking tears. It's to the point, and I'm gonna maybe start getting into the territory of things that can get me flagged as misinformation, as funny as that may be. You know, like Facebook has literally censored people who were giving first-hand account experiences of stuff that they directly went through, and it was flagged as misinformation because independent fact checkers who weren't there are somehow more insightful. But nonetheless, Trump has made a statement that he is going to visit the border, that he's going to see whatever it is that he can try to help do, which he's not in he's not in a position of political power, which so may just be like a little bit of a, but at least it's that. At least it's that. You at least expect politicians to fucking dry jerk you and make you feel like they're doing something for you. But that's, I don't know, that's kind of odd to me that you have the former president in any capacity at least making a statement of a plan to go to the border, and you have the vice president for over 12 weeks was directly appointed by the president to address that problem, lies about being there, makes jokes about, oh, well, I haven't been to the UK either, like that has fuck all to do with what's going on with that fucking situation. And the media doesn't talk about Trump in that regard, and they don't talk about Kamala in that regard. So I think the goal of their narrative in that regard becomes very clear.
Daddy?
Hi, Shiny. I'm doing a video. Hold on, boo. Okay. Alright, so before I get into the big thing that'll probably get me flagged on the Facebook video, so as an aside, I'm going to upload this video also to my Minds, and which is Baker the Low 13110 at Minds.
Love you.
And love you too, boo. And then I'm also going to put it up on our YouTube, which is at Valbees Gaming at YouTube. But anyway, so before I get into that territory, I want to point out one thing. It's been put various different ways, but a tried and true slogan of stores is, we pass the savings on to you, the customer. So in regards to businesses rather having to compete with high unemployment wages, in some cases averaging anywhere from $14 to $16 an hour that people who are unemployment right now are getting, not to mention all the other state benefits and everything like that. But if they're going to pass the savings on to the customer, then they are also going to pass the cost of it, the increase of cost of doing business to the customer as well. Whether it be hikes in requirements for minimum wage, whether it be businesses having to offer wages that are way above what they're financially able to do in order to stay competitive with the unemployment benefit market, or Joe Biden's commitment to raise corporate taxes, that is going and is already being pushed upon the consumer. Make no fucking doubt about that. You can, like Ben Shapiro said in a debate, that if you could raise minimum wage up to $1 million and the market will react. We've already seen the market react in one way or another. Bread alone is up about 30 to 40 cents on average over the last month and a half. And you'll only extrapolate it to other essentials from there. Let alone the fact that you start to see that certain things just aren't being produced anymore because of the materials to get them aren't as readily available, or the people who are producing them aren't there. It seems like we're ever so close, either through trying to force continual stimulus payments every quarter, or trying to do monthly universal basic income. It already seems like they're trying to get families used to it through, they give you the option to opt out a couple of weeks before it's supposed to start, but the child tax credit, which basically made it to where, low to middle income families could actually, deal with their taxes every year without having to owe thousands and thousands of dollars. So just remember that. If they pass the savings on to you, they're going to pass the cost of doing business on to you as well. Make no doubt about it. Make no doubt about it. And the only other thing that comes along with that you can bet your fucking bottom dollar on is automation. You already see it more and more. You already see places like Walmart committing to, I believe it was 2024 or 2025, to having, no human checkouts. Well, what do you think that does? That increases their profit because they have automation slavery to do their work for them. Then you have the customers who also do the other part of the manual labor as far as bagging their own goods. The cost of goods just keeps going up. So that's just a continual short and long-term profit for these fucking companies. But it's okay because they did it for you, to protect you from COVID. Alright, now, the last little thing. I'm going to start off with something that I hit on the beat before. It really sucks that we don't have investigative journalism for many reasons, whether it's because of the woke social mob and they're afraid of how it's going to affect their standings within their company, because companies are worried about how it's going to affect their shareholders and things like that. We don't have objective journalism anymore, in my opinion, or at least on the mainstream media. You have independent journalists and independent media, such as Tim Pool with the Timcast IRL. You have Steven Crowder with Louder with Crowder. You even have some smaller channels like Sinatra Says that does a bit of a compilation of information that's available. But as far as the mainstream media, you hear none of them talking about the voting audits that are going on right now. And this is what I mean, where it kind of might get me into flag territory. So again, check me out on my Minds, check me out on my my YouTube. But from what little information that's able to be gathered because of the mass censorship between big tech and the mainstream media, it's been almost proven for a fact that Trump won Georgia through the voting audits that were done. And there are 3 other states, as far as I understand, that are doing voting audits right now. And those 4 states in particular are going to, once the information, in my opinion, comes out and shows that there was something amiss with this last presidential cycle. You already had the Times came out with a front page article where they were stating that there were efforts taken to fortify the election. So I'm going to put it to you like this. In my own dumbass layman fucking understanding of how things work. If you have a structure that's already set in place, and regardless, for whatever reasons, you're worried about that structure not being integral enough, if you fortify it, you are changing what is already established as what was acceptable. You know, the only reason why I think it's accepted is because it was in effort to benefit the people who hold the majority of the social power. They came right out and said that they made efforts to make the election more fortified. And when you look at the efforts that they took, it seems very clear that those efforts were to bolster their chosen party, which would obviously be the Democratic left. It's a sad day that it doesn't even seem like Fox is talking about it, because again, this is this whole mob, social mob mentality. Because I'm not part of a fucking corporation, and I don't have shareholders to worry about. But to me, it seems just, odd that you don't have media or journalists that actually provide investigative journalism anymore. Now, this is a bit into the speculation territory, but one way or another, this information, much like with what came out with what was once considered conspiracy theory with the Wuhan lab, which was once considered conspiracy theory with Fauci lying about what information he knew, what was considered conspiracy theory about bats being in the Wuhan lab, was found out that Peter Daszak was lying. You start to see a consistent trend of things that are labeled as a conspiracy theory by the left that actually hold water. So how long until they can't hold back the levies on that information anymore, and it just comes flooding down? There is no, at least as far as I understand, there is no precedent for what process would take place if it's proven that somehow an election was frauded. But I do know the people that were frauded won't stand back and take it, and the people who did the frauding won't sit back and take it either. I believe it was yesterday or 2 days ago, you already have small civil spats bubbling up again. You have Antifa and Proud Boys going at it in Portland. The only difference is that, at least as currently, the people who would respond to that, the riot squad, resigned. And in my opinion, they resigned because they don't want to have to arrest and see the people who are actually trying to defend this country stay in jail, because they're for the most part, they're law-abiding citizens, or they're citizens who stand behind the actions that they take, as opposed to the Antifa or Black Bloc or whatever you want to call them, people who are going around, who still have been firebombing government installations, who still have been going around looting places, who set up 2 different autonomous zones, who were taking part in the summer of love, as one fucking Democratic leader put it. They get off. They get let go. Or they run. They're for the large part living in anonymity the way that they work. I'm just interested to see how it's going to go. I just hope at some point that we can get some semblance of investigative journalism back. We can get to where news was like when I was a kid, where it's dry, it's dull as hell, but that's kind of, I think, how it's supposed to be. You know, you can have some independent media who's going to be a little bit more biased and things like that, or special segments, or editorials. You know, editorials used to be a little bit of an aside when it came to journalism. It was the journalist saying, hey, I think you guys know me and respect me enough that I'm going to put my own personal opinion and spin it into this news story. So, Facebook, fuck you. Mine's in YouTube. YouTube is of its own thing, you know. Again, they're so beholden to shareholders and things like that. I could strongly recommend mine because I say the same thing that I say on YouTube, but I don't get censored. I don't get censored, in my opinion, on this other platform because I don't say things that are outside of the law. As bad as it can be, misinformation is not. There's no laws on it. There's no laws on it. Otherwise, you know, sorry, I may fucking rustle some feathers here, but religion would have a hard time getting by in this goddamn country. Not saying it's not true, but if you go on the basis of how you trust the science, come on now. I don't speak hate speech, even though it's not a real thing. But again, the only speech that is against the law is speech where you go out and call people to action. Even if it's a positive thing and somebody gets hurt for some reason, you know, you're still responsible because you made that call to action. Whether you're making a call to action for a good or a bad thing, that is the only time where speech holds its legal recourse. And if people don't stand up against that, we are going to face a government that is going to use the current social anxieties to take control of what speech is and isn't allowed. I'm going to go with this one final note. I recommend, if ever you're going to read a book or listen to an audio book, listen or read George Orwell's 1984. For many reasons. The one I'm going to talk about today is going to be Winston's job. Winston worked at the Ministry of Truth. Now, the Ministry of Truth did several different things, but specifically Winston's job was to go in and rewrite stories from the news with the purpose to have a greater control on society. And when you have Democrats coming out and saying that they never said that voter ID laws were racist, when we know for a fact that they did, but you have the media carrying the water for them, you might want to ask yourself, how far off are we from that society? Is that one I'll be part of?